I guess people should, should start asking questions. It is a Q&A, so I guess we depend on questions from people about the Raku Steering Council. Right, Vadim?
No.
So who all do we have from the Steering Council? I know I'm here. Maybe, Liz, we should go around and just each say hi and make sure everyone knows who we are. I think most people do, but hi, I'm Daniel. Liz, you've already spoken. Who else do we have here?
Jeffrey Broadwell.
William Bellman.
JJ Merello here.
Yeah, it looks like Nick and Stefan Seifert are not with us, so I guess that's just the 5 of us. And I guess if there's no questions, we can go to the next presentation.
Mm-hmm.
That would be one way to get back on schedule.
Probably the fastest. I'm actually surprised that that nobody's asking any questions. Like, there are open issues for the council. There are things that have been controversial over the last year. I'm curious if anybody has anything they would like to ask us or thoughts they would like to put in that don't need to be recorded for posterity. Oops, wait, I'm sorry, we're live and recording.
Would it be possible just to give a brief overview of the last couple of meetings? I mean, you can read the minutes, which I do from time to time, but they're not very long. They don't give any indication of sort of where you're going forward as a council. What's your main priorities as a council? Are you working? What feedback? More feedback would you want from the community? I mean, you just asked us now. Ask us questions without telling us that you weren't going to make a sort of presentation to begin with. So I'm throwing out a very broad one. I would like to know, what are your immediate concerns? What are your plans? How can we help?
Okay, I guess I'll be taking this then. Am I? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello.
We can hear you, Liz. And,
Okay,
and why don't you start? I'll have some thoughts as well, but go ahead and get us started, Liz.
Well, I guess the steering council basically got created because we wanted to get into a situation where, for the hard decisions, Jonathan Worthington, the de facto pumpkin, would not have to be bothered anymore. And I guess we taken a little step from that, further from that, from then. But I would say, at the moment, you could argue we are a bit in a I would say in a lull with the steering council. We have, I guess, the situations around us are at least also affecting me personally, as well as Vadim very, very definitely. I mean, the situation in Ukraine is basically on our minds all of the time. And yeah, sometimes it's hard to get people together for meetings and to actually get to a point where we decide something. So I guess if we're going to make any resolutions, we should be trying to actually make more decisions in the future. And that's a lot of problem-solving issues that we can decide on if we set our minds to it. And that's, I guess, is what I wanted to say about that. Daniel?
One thing I wanted to add is, in one of the ways the question was phrased in the chat is like, what are we steering towards? And I don't want to speak for the whole council, but one thing that I have been trying to put some time and energy into over the last couple of years, and especially the last few months, has been making sure that we, as the Raku community, are working not at cross purposes at the very least with YAS and the broader Perl and Raku community. The YAS, also known as the Raku Foundation or the Perl Foundation, but more formally known as yet another society, has a fair amount of money and institutional resources and organizational resources that they are willing to devote to the support of the Perl and Raku ecosystems. They, for example, put on the Perl and Raku Conference just recently, but a lot of times the people who are most active in the leadership of that community draw much more heavily from the Perl side of the Perl and Raku community than from the Raku side. And I know that there are good historical reasons for that. But it's also the case that the organization as a whole is supposed to be supporting both of our communities. So part of what I've been trying to do, and part of what I view as a legitimate part of the Steering Council's mission, is to make sure that that we are represented in that space and do have this sort of voice, and that they are aware of what they can do to support our community just as much as they support the Perl community. And in terms of what you can do to help on that, attending meetings, or for people who are in the States, or in North America, or can get to North America, attending the conferences. Bruce was there, Matthew was there. We had several Raku attendees at the Perl and Raku Conference, but we didn't have as many talks as we could have. There was some question from YAS of like, do we want to keep including Raku in this conference if we're not going to get more talk submissions? So, that's an area where I would encourage more people to be involved in the future, assuming we do want to continue having a North American conference, which I think is good. I think it's an area that raises Raku's profile and draws more people, gets more people exposed to the idea of Raku. And I can tell you, just even myself, the number of people I talked to at that conference who hadn't heard of Raku before, but were exposed to it and interested in learning more about it was pretty high. So that's one area that I've been working on, and that the council as a whole has been working on, at least to some extent.
Well, I guess there's no more questions.
I could throw in one, maybe.
Oh, well,
Yeah,
go
that'd be
ahead.
great.
Yeah, if it's okay. You kind of answered, Daniel, the thing I was originally thinking of asking about what's going on with the Steering Council towards the yes, yet another society. But I'm also wondering if you guys have any specific ambitions, something you think is worth addressing, or as you look at as an issue or a set of issues you would like to raise in order to improve some situation. Like, do you have you made some thoughts around that? Could you say something about that?
Well,
I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure I followed that. Could you say a little bit more about, could you expand on that a little bit? I just didn't quite follow what you were asking.
I'm wondering about ambitions for the Steering Council. What do you have any specific visions for the future? Maybe for the my original thought was towards the yet another society and the Raku and Perl foundations, but also maybe to solve or address something you would like to address for the general community in some sort. Where are your thoughts going for the future right now?
I think there's a certain amount of stuff that is, oh, sorry to cut you off, Liz.
no, go ahead.
I think there are some things that we kind of generally see as like larger community issues that need to be dealt with. And some of it is a matter of, coming together as a group to come to some decision, or to kind of take a rough idea and make it a little bit tighter, and then for people to go off and implement it. And I got to say, Liz has been one of the top people for implementing ideas coming out of the council. She's done a whole bunch of that sort of stuff. But it's like, for example, when we decide, okay, how are we going to deal with the fact that CPAN does not provide some of the functionality that we need? We need to get people moved over to Zeph. What is involved there? And then we talk it through, and we kind of go, you know what? Somebody needs to sit down and start moving all the community stuff. We need to make sure that people have the tools that they need. So a lot of it is getting people together to figure out what needs to be done to solve something that everybody sees as a community issue, and to decide what we're going to do about cases where, we've got to make a fundamental change. Are we actually going to do it? Are we going to do it over time? How long until we decide to turn off something? Like, when do we turn off the P6C ecosystem as a default? Like, when do we make these various changes? So those kind of things come up in our discussions quite a bit. I don't think that we have a roadmap per se. I think we have sort of a list of things that we're working on, and discussions that we have about them, and how to move forward on them. There's things that each of us find important, and that we kind of bring up in our discussions, but it's not so much that we have a fixed roadmap or a fixed goal or something like that. Go ahead, Liz.
There's one roadmap goal that I think the Raku Steering Council is responsible for, and that's getting out the next version of the Raku language, aka 6E, and yeah, trying to make that happen. Of course, it all depends on people actually doing work to make that happen. And it would be nice if there would be more people trying to help with that. And I think I'm very glad with all of the efforts that Alexander and all the other people in the doc on the documentation are now doing, because that is a weak point of the Raku ecosystem, community, if you will. And I'm very glad that they're working on that. And there's other stuff that people could do, and nothing comes to mind actually that just jumps out, because there's just too many things that you can do. So ask me privately what could be done, and I'll tell you what could be done. But getting 6E out is, I think, the main goal that the Raku Steering Council has at the moment, I would say.
And to address very briefly to the extent your question was specifically about YAS, the short-term goal there, we already have the Raku Foundation as a alias for YAS, but we want very much to have a website that does not mention Perl, where we can direct someone to donate to grants that support Raku development, that say, where we can do that without needing to explain the historical ties with Perl to someone who may not be familiar with all of that history. And YAS is already on board with that, and that work is currently in progress.
And from my side, I would like to add that the situation as I see it now, normally when you have some kind of big ambitions, you need some kind of ground to base them upon. And that ground is, it has to be prepared first. And we basically started from scratch, from zero. And it's not about the steering council alone, but it's about the Raku language, I would say, because we can say that it's only a few years as the language is out of development. A lot of problems organizational in the first place. So I would say that the primary task of this steering council is to have those grounds prepared, and releasing 6E is probably the key things to be done. And when it's done, there are more. There are going to be more time and more resources to do other important things. But so far, we need to resolve a lot of smaller issues so that when we move on to the next steering council, they will need to spend less time on those minor details. That's probably the biggest ambition for us, to prepare the next level of organizational work for the language.
I think JJ Adria want to say something.
Yeah. Sorry. So I have this is sort of motivated, I guess, because of some stuff that I'm going to mention in my talk, but also stuff that came up in Leon's talk. I was wondering if you see it as part of the role of the steering council to I don't know how to phrase this question. Let me start again. There are modules in the ecosystem that are very high priority, for the community. Stuff that that offers database support, or like testing, things that are of course the work of their authors, but that the community relies on very much.
Modules that are upriver, I think, is the phrase that they use in Perl.
Right. So and some of them have been around for a long time because they're essential, and some of the ones that have been around for a long time are not necessarily very actively maintained. I know that a lot of them have ended up in the Raku community module sort of organization, and that there is a page to sort of adopt them. Do you see that as one of the things that the steering council needs to sort of push forward, or is that something that you expect the community to handle?
I hope we can actually push the community to handle this, but in practice, it comes down to a few people that are very active, and I have been one of them, importing a lot of modules, and at one point I got sick of it again and decided to do something else because it's supposed to be fun. So in a little while I'll probably get back to porting modules again if nobody else does it, and so that's how it basically works, I think. But please, if you are willing to look at a upriver module, even if it's not in the community modules repo, because there's plenty of modules that are upriver that are actually also not maintained, but still in the original authors repos, and also sort of dormant there. Please do start by making PRs, kick the authors a little bit in the butt so that they can actually start doing stuff again for Raku. That would help. But yeah, most welcome. And if you want to have things happen faster, you will have to do it or get somebody else to do it. Salve?
All right. So, more questions from me. So I haven't followed much what the steering council has been, you guys have been doing. So apologies if this is known information. Have you had any discussions or decisions around delegating some tasks to, say, for example, the Raku Foundation, or giving them a formal mandate? And an example for that would, for example, be giving them a mandate to do fundraising, for example, in order to get enough funding to hire someone to do all kinds of boring stuff that one wouldn't be able to find a volunteer for. Has this been a topic, or is this something you would be open to do if it hasn't been a topic?
It's certainly been something that we've had to do for the administration of the domains and just the technical side of it. So we have a technical team for Raku's various online pieces, and that is something that we have sometimes spent more time on, sometimes less. But the big thing was that, you know, originally it was a scattered mess, and so a fair portion of where the steering council came in was saying, okay, we need to collect this together. We need to get all the information to a small number of people that is not exactly one, because we don't want the bus number problem. We want to have a couple, 3 people that know all of the different things and that have some ability to start cleaning up all the stuff that is different between the different sites. So we have done that. We have set up sort of subcommittees, I guess, or groups, teams to do various things. But we haven't assigned many of them to TRF, because right now the best representative to TRF is one of the members of our group. It's Daniel. So we have this problem of like, well, who would we be handing it to? Right now, Daniel's doing the job of making it so that TRF is a real thing, which I very much appreciate. But I don't think right now we have humans who have understanding and time to hand that off to in the TRF case. But like I said, we have done it for tech.
Well, except in the case of fundraising, I think that, and
yes,
since you mentioned that specifically, the Raku Foundation and yes, more broadly, does handle fundraising. And one of the efforts that, and they do have a part-time administrative and marketing person, one person who does marketing and a little bit of admin, and then another person who does a few hours of admin, who are paid. Those are the only paid people at YAS. And one big project that they have been working on over the past 6 months was putting out a fundraising prospectus. And so, you know, in terms of delegating, we did delegate that to them, and we did provide them with the information that was necessary to have a Raku section of that fundraising prospectus. So we've definitely been working with and delegating in that sense.
Although I think, Daniel, like a huge portion of that was driven by you directly. It wasn't something that you could completely delegate, but something that you seem to be pretty heavily involved with as well.
Well, I was heavily involved in generating the content for it, but in terms of the printing and the layout and all of the other significant amounts of work that go into turning words into an actual prospectus, they handled all of that.
Shocking. Design work, I don't understand.
Well, I guess if this, Rob, go ahead.
Rob?
We can't see you or hear you. Hello? Counting down, 5, 4, 3, 2. Richard?
Richard has a question.
Well, I don't know. You keep sort of ending it as if this session is about to end.
We had 20 minutes allocated.
Yes, you've still got another 10.
Not, yeah, but yeah, you can.
No, yeah. So it's not really a question. Before the end came, I wanted to express my appreciation to all of the members of the committee and the hard work that you've done. And I know from my own personal experience how burnout happens, and with the best will of the world. And I just want to express my own view that that all of this sort of itty bitty administrative work is a pain and a half, but it needs to be done. And I'm very glad that there are such enthusiastic and experienced people doing it. So my big hand to all of you.
Thank you.
Patrick?
Just to elaborate on that a bit further, I also very much appreciate what you're doing. And I assume you have met in the last 3 months or so. I very much think so. And I do like reading the minutes, so I encourage you to put them online.
We had meetings, but they weren't worth writing minutes for.
So there is some stuff that we had taken down, like minutes for, and then we kind of looked at them and said, all this is pretty much, we had a discussion and we didn't make a final decision. So yeah, we can include that sort of thing. I had been trying to keep really detailed notes, and then I got an RSI flare up and couldn't do that. So it went sort of back to the case of we had a meeting and we discussed things. But I do recognize that it's a valuable thing, and so like we'll try to get back to those long form notes for you if we can.
Yeah, I'd like to support that, because if you're not involved in a discussion, you don't know that the discussion has happened. So even if something was discussed and you didn't reach a decision, or you needed to put off a decision, just an indication of that a discussion is ongoing is actually quite useful to someone who's not involved. And the other thing is, as I said, I left for 1.5 to 2 years because of other things. I got something else on my mind, and I came back to the very first place I went to was the minutes of the council to see what was happening and to try and catch up. So it is quite helpful for people who are out of the loop, so to speak.
Yeah, I will say one thing, which is that people had gotten used to us doing it every 2 weeks. Over the summer, we had enough people out that we moved it to once a month during the Northern Hemisphere summer. That may change again when we don't have as much vacation, when there's more stuff going on. We may keep it at once a month until we have a really active topic. So don't be surprised if it's, like September before you see any new notes, but I'm going to try and make sure it happens.
And I think we are now over time, unless I'm not keeping our schedule correctly. I'm a little confused about the schedule, but I believe we're out of time. So unless there are any pressing questions, that seems like a good place to end it.